Hi, welcome to the Second Wind Academy podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Gonsalves. Malvin, welcome to the show. Good to have you on here today.
Good to be here, Ryan. Good to be here.
Excellent. Now, I know it's good that I'm actually catching you today out and about, which, judging by as we've been communicating, I think I've caught you in just about every time zone possible. So it's good you're in one place.
Yeah, yeah, indeed. I've been in the UK for a couple of weeks now, so I'm flying out again next week. But I'm here, so I've been meaning to get on this
Love
with you
that.
for a while. So it's good. It's good to be here.
Look, it should be a really fascinating conversation. One, because we both played at Huddersfield Town, albeit, a good 10 plus years apart. But good just to track your story and really share some insights for those listening today. Now, to kick us off, for those who don't know who
Yeah,
you are,
no,
who
definitely.
haven't followed, please, can you just tell us who you are, tell us what you're up to nowadays?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. My name is Malvin Kamara, and as Ryan said, I'm a former professional footballer. Played for the likes of Wimbledon, Cardiff, and Huddersfield Town. But fast forward, today sees me as the CEO and founder of a recruitment company called Valum Associates. We are based in central London. We have offices in London and an office in Boston in the United States, and trying to grow and scale that organization and hopefully take it to the point of eventual sale. I'm also a director at a cloud consulting business called Cloud Elemental.
Wow. Now that's amazing. You're probably one of the first people who I'm speaking to who are saying, yeah, office in London. I'm thinking he's going to say, I thought you were going to say Bolton or something like that. But here you're jumping straight into Boston. I quite like that. What made you
We've
pick
opened up
Boston
for.
first? What was going on there?
It was really because obviously recruitment is a well-established market in UK and Europe, and in America it's probably a lot younger. And obviously with the scales of economy in the States, obviously the fees are so large over there, as you can imagine. Places like New York, Boston, there are inflated salaries. So the potential uplift in terms of revenue is huge over there. And also because recruitment is in a saturated and it's such a larger country, recruitment consultants are actually have a good reputation over there currently. Whereas obviously in the UK and Europe, in such a saturated market, our reputations aren't as say positive here. But so it's a great opportunity over there, and we've got a team that are trying to make waves and establish ourselves in the country.
That's amazing. I suppose I've never really thought about recruitment and how it is so different in various markets. But you mentioning that in the US, it's not as
Yep.
saturated as you said. That's good to know. That's an interesting thing. How did you figure that out? Was it being there yourself or some other intel that was like, hey, there's a great opportunity?
Yeah. You see the trends and the size of the opportunity, and I think working as we do currently from the UK market, we work globally from the UK office, and in terms of talking about with some of our clients who have headquarters over there or who have offices over there, and they've asked us to support them on certain initiatives. We kind of saw how large the fees were. We did. I suppose a pilot with one of our US-based banks, and quite quickly, I think we worked with them for around 5 months, and they were in our top three of in terms of revenue spend with us for that year. So we were quite quickly like, wow, there's a lot of money to be made over there. So that was kind of our pilot or our proof of concept, if you will. So that really kind of ignited the fires, and we see it anyway in terms of trends and some of the other players in recruitment that are opening offices over there, and the traction and the success that they're having. So it was a no-brainer for us in terms of expanding the organization, and we always wanted to have kind of a global footprint. So the US market is one which is kind of high on our agenda as a board to crack, which will hopefully give us the strength and make us more appealing in the future for someone to come and acquire the organization.
Right. Yeah. I love the fact you've got that plan already so clear in terms of how you wanting to build the business and what that exit or partnership plan looks like in the future. Is that something you feel you've learned to do through business, or was it something you've kind of always had with you?
No, no, it's been a case of actually. So particularly with myself, is I come with a certain set of skill sets, and what's happened over the years is, and might sound a bit hippyish, but I think my energy and my drive in terms of what I'm trying to create has attracted the right people at the right times. Um, so because of that, people have come along that have got previous experience in this and have been able to, I suppose, teach me and enlighten me into the ways that this should be done. My CFO is a chap from Harvey Nash, who's been and structured multiple deals when it comes to exiting and exit strategy. So he's been integral to what we're doing here and how we're building this.
Yeah, I, certainly not hippie-ish at all. Um, Quite interesting, I would say. um, and what I like is, I guess, true to values. In fact, one of the most interesting bits you said there was that you come with a certain set of skills, and thinking of that, that sounds to me, a great time for us to go and actually come back a bit into your sporting background, because I'd love to build to understand that your recognition of
Yeah,
what your set of skills are. And so, I know we opened up
yeah.
football. That's something that you're doing. Take me back then. Was did you have a passion for football? Was that something that ran strong in your family?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think from an early age, I have a big brother and a dad. My dad supported Tottenham, and then in true fashion, my eldest brother decided to support Arsenal, just to probably spite my dad. So me and my twin brother ended up as Arsenal fans as well. And it was really, I think, him and his passion for football, which initially ignited my own passion. I wasn't really interested in it when I was really young, but he was really passionate, and him and my twin brother are super Arsenal fans. They're super passionate supporters. So I think I kind of piggybacked off that, and then once I'd played and would playing with him and his friends, that's where my first interest began. And I think he was a good footballer himself. His friends were good footballers. I was playing with them. They were like 6 years older than me. So I think that fast tracked my development as a footballer, because I was having to get good to be able to compete with these guys. So that's where my first love began. And obviously I was really young at the time, 7, 8, and then went on to do, with my twin brother, playing for the schools, playing for Sunday league teams. And there was just a natural development there. And I think my competitive edge, and actually something which fast forward to today has enabled me to be successful in business, is that drive was really developed at a really young age for me. I remember playing against my twin brother in the garden, one v one, and sometimes he'd be like, right, I'm going in, and I'd be like, no, come on, let's keep playing. And I'd sometimes stay out and just play by myself against the wall. And what I didn't realize, looking back at that time, that was the hunger developing in me to be successful at something. I didn't see it as that at the time. I just wanted to play football. But when I look back and actually look at what that is, that's kind of the competitor in me. That's the hunger in me and the desire to get better, want to compete. That was all formulating there at a very, very young age. And when we went on to play for our Sunday league teams, I remember I was the one after each game. I remember our first season in particular in Sunday league, we weren't very good as a team, and we lost, I think, most games, and we got relegated. And I would cry after every single game. I'd cry my eyes out.
Yeah,
And that was again the competitor in me. Everyone was like this baby here, but I was just so hungry to win and so upset that we lost that I couldn't handle it. I would cry.
yeah,
And again, when I look back on it, that's the competitor in me not wanting it, being prepared. And that time, obviously, being a bit immature, not able to handle failures. But that was, again, the difference between me and the people I was playing with. Whereas they would say, oh, we lost, we'll go home. I was like, I wouldn't accept it.
mm,
And it hurt me to the core to lose.
yeah.
And, I look back on these things and I'm like, wow, actually, that is
That,
the competitor in
that
me starting to
yeah,
develop. And that's what gave me the drive that I have to this very day.
yeah, yeah. That sense, that feeling, the drive, and you speak about that, and I hear it a lot in the getting comfortable, just repeating things, getting out and practicing harder, and like you said, even when your brother left, you you were still out there doing that same thing. Did When did you realize you were good? What When was that?
I think it was in prime quite early on in primary school. I think I was there was a clear gap that started to form quite early on actually between me and the people that I played with, and by the time we got to year six, I think it's year six in primary school, and me and my brother were playing, it was me and him that were just scoring all of the goals, between the two. He was a very good player as well, actually, when we were a lot younger. Still a good player now, but particularly when we were younger, there wasn't much between me and him. Again, I think the only differential actually on between me and him at that age was that I kind of was a lot hungrier for it than he was. He had passions in other things, singing. He was only actually still a singer to this day. So he had other things which probably took his energy away from focusing on football. But there wasn't a lot between us,
Mhm.
particularly in the early years. Um, he was very good, but I think between the two of us, we were by far, I think, the best players in our primary school, and that went on in actually to secondary school, where quite early on, again, my passion had really developed by that point, and I ended up playing for the district, and then going on to play for West Ham at a really young age, and kind of that's where I think the biggest gap formed, particularly between me and my brother, because I would say he was focused on other things such as singing, which
Mhm.
was a great passion. He's a fantastic singer.
Yeah.
So he had other things where he was spending his energy, and I was purely focused on football. That was it. I knew from probably the age of, I'd say 8 or 9, that I was going to be a professional footballer in some capacity. I didn't know to what level, but I knew there was something in me that told me very early on I was going to be a professional footballer. So much so, I remember in secondary school when we had, when the people come in to do career fairs and they
Yeah.
talk about what you want to be when you're older. And I told her I'm going to be a professional footballer. And obviously she tried to talk that out of me.
Delicately
Oh,
moved.
be realistic. And I was like, yeah. I was like, no, there's no further conversation to be had here. If you're not going to listen to it, I'm telling you, I'm going to be a footballer. And I had so much belief in that, so much belief. I just knew it. I had almost an intuition that
Mm.
I'm going to be a professional footballer. I knew it, and then that hunger was so strong in me that there was no other option. There was no option but to be a footballer, and I look back on my career and I can almost pinpoint the point that I lost that feeling in me
Right. Okay.
and that complacency set in,
Yeah.
and that was the beginning of the downfall.
What was
I can
special?
actually pinpoint it
But what
to this day when I
talk to me? What was that moment? What was what changed for you to pinpoint where that passion left you?
it was I think it was complacency. In fact, it was 100% complacency that because I'd had this feeling for so long, and then it had come to fruition where I actually made it as a footballer. I was just part of me was like, well, this is it. I've done it. I've done
Mm.
the hard work. I knew I was going to get here. Now the rest
Yeah.
is already written. I don't need to try anymore, which was a mistake in hindsight. And I remember I'd got to the point it was when we was at Wimbledon, and I made my professional debut quite young, and then they made the transition to MK Dons, and I went with them. And again, I had all that hunger, that fire. And I remember one season I was on absolute fire, and there was all articles. I remember my brother coming up, going, "You're in the newspaper." At the time, I think it was Middlesbrough, and someone were going to be coming in to sign me. So it was at the time they were all in the Premier League. There was Man City, Middlesbrough, and Blackburn. I think and Everton. I was linked with, and at that time I was like, well, this is it. I've done it.
Mm.
Like,
Mhm.
and the move didn't come to fruition. I remember actually at the time MK Dons would come into the airport as I was going on holiday to go sign your contract quickly. And in hindsight, I knew why they were doing that, so I didn't end up going on a free transfer elsewhere. But I signed the contract, and then all of the kind of interest kind of died away. But I was still just like, as I say, one, I was a bit upset that the move hadn't happened, but also two, I was a bit complacent that I would get a move anyway. And it was at that point, and I think arrogance and things like that definitely played a part in me not being as hungry or as direct in terms of what I wanted, and losing that vision for my career. And that's definitely the point where things started to take a downward spiral.
So you were, but you were just saying, so you were just about talking. You had, so if I get this right, you were linked with some of the Premier League clubs, decent big Premier League clubs at the time, and that
Yeah.
was the moment that started to shift a level of complacency in you. And you were just saying that's the
Yep.
point where you started to realize, yeah, I've done it. I'm good. The strive has
Yep.
gone. Yeah. See,
Yep.
when you look back at
Yep.
that moment,
100%.
yeah, when you look back at that moment now, well, how do you feel?
Um, I think it took me a while to come to terms with it, and to be honest, I probably didn't even realize it until when I stopped playing and actually I'd come out of that transition period, that
Yeah.
dark period where you're trying to figure out life and life is coming at you really fast. I don't have the time to sit back and reflect on
Mm.
kind of what went right, what went wrong, what did I learn. And it wasn't until my life started to go on an upward trajectory again that I was able to actually look back on my career, with fondness and
Mhm.
recollect it in for the fun times I had, but also start to take some learnings from what I did wrong, and be able to accept those things, because it's almost a blame game. Anyone but
Yeah.
yourself when you're hurting in the early years. But once you come out of that and you're able to look back on my career and actually think about, okay, what did I actually do wrong?
Mhm.
That was definitely one of the most pivotal moments in my career, where the downward spiral started, and I was taken for granted. I definitely took my foot off the pedal, rather than think, actually, I need to shift up a gear here.
Mhm. Yeah.
Now that I've made it and I'm starting to develop a name for myself, and this is the time to shift up to the next gear. I did the
Yeah.
opposite and shifted down, thinking, I'm in cruise control here. I just you know
Yeah.
this is my forever now. This is I made it, and that, in hindsight, was the biggest mistake that I made. And I think the second mistake that I made was not relying on the support of, like, my brothers. I'd always had them growing up,
Mm.
in football in some capacity, either to talk to or to come and watch or to play with. And again, when I went through that period of leaving to go to, I think it was maybe after MK Dons, when I went to Cardiff, of not ensuring they were in my life as my support network, getting them to games, being with them, spending time with them. I kind of lost that, which was support, which I didn't know
Mm.
was support at the time. But I just was like, again, I've made it. I don't need anyone. This is all easy. And in hindsight, looking back on it, if I'd have done those two things, actually, at that point when I didn't get the move, say, right, it's fine, you had that, the eyes are
Mm.
on you, now go up another
Yeah.
level, really, really push this next season, because everyone's going to be looking at you, and you can go and secure that move. And secondly, getting my brothers around me to, one, not keep me grounded. I didn't need that. I was always fairly humble when I played, but just have them as my support network,
Yeah.
and be able to
Yeah.
talk to them, spend time with them as my family, and really recognize that I'm doing it for them as much as I'm doing it for myself. Which, again, I lost that perspective on it. Those were the two biggest mistakes I made, definitely, when playing.
Yeah. When playing, talking about finding that next gear. So when the performance matters is finding that next gear to push you forward, to demonstrate you can do more, actually, that you're not full, you're not
Yeah,
finished. Don't be complacent and keep striving, and keeping your support network around you. And it is interesting because you did describe that as not to keep you grounded or to keep you humble, but actually to help you or remind you of the purpose, remind you that the drive isn't, well, it's not just
yeah,
kicking the ball, but it's for yourself. It is for the family as well. Now, I think that's really interesting, and I think we're going to come back to that because I can hear certain links there with what you're striving for now and where you're pushing your business to that next level. It's not just one office here, but it's, well, what does global look like? What does that piece, what's that next step really for you?
yeah.
That, but
Absolutely,
before we go there,
absolutely.
I I want to just pick on, whilst you were coming through school and whilst you recognize, hey, I'm a footballer, no more careers, doesn't matter what else you want to tell me, it's football. What was happening
Yeah,
for you from an academic perspective? Where did school and school work fit into your
yeah.
early career?
Do you know what? I was quite, again. It was really weird. Me and my brothers, our academic lives were quite, because we're twins, but we were quite parallel when it came to things like that. I was a competitor, so I didn't want to lose in anything, and I was quite fortunate coming from, I don't want to say. super strict, but a fairly strict kind of African household. Education was always high on the priority list. So, and I was naturally, I wasn't gifted. Don't get me wrong, but I was able to have a fun. Have fun, have a good time, but also absorb information. So, you know, with not that much effort, actually, I was able to at the right times get my head down, cram for a test, and actually do pretty well at that test. So, that process of educating myself was fairly one I found actually fairly easy. And whilst we didn't, I wouldn't say we knocked out our GCSEs out the park. We did well, and it was actually weird. Me and my brother got exactly the same marks. We both got 1 A star, I think 1 A star, 2 or 3 A's, 4 B's, 2 C's. So we both did fairly well in our exams, and again that was with, I would say, I don't want to say minimal effort, but I didn't have to work that hard to achieve those grades. I wasn't studying for months before. It was literally the night before a test. I would see what tests I have in the morning, spend a couple of hours revising the night before. Obviously, I'd retained some information from my
Yeah.
lessons, but so I understood the basic premise of what we were going to be tested on. But the real kind of cramming came a
Mm.
day or two before. That was our study regime. We'd both do it. We'd look at our exam timetable, and 1 or 2 nights before each exam, we would just shift our focus onto those lessons. And that's what we did for
Yeah.
our GCSEs. My brother would play every morning his tape whilst we got ready to go to our exams of music. He'd be singing along in the bathroom, and we'd both go do the exams and come out and just play football or something. So our exams and education was pretty easy.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And then obviously after we got the results, we were both pretty pleased with them. He went on to further education. I left to go and do full-time football. But
Hmm.
yeah, our education and my passion for football didn't, I wouldn't say, maybe
Didn't
didn't it didn't
compromise.
impact my education that
Yeah.
much. Maybe I would. You what? Sorry.
You didn't have to
No, I didn't
compromise.
compromise it, and
That's good.
no, I didn't have to. And I think again that was just through a bit of strict discipline from our parents with
Mm.
terms of educating ourselves. And also I didn't. Again, the competitor in me, I didn't want to be stupid. I was just like, I can't be known as. I don't want to. I'm a competitor here, so if I'm doing something,
Yeah.
I'm going to do it properly. I'm not gonna fail. And it was that kind of, I suppose, drive to not fail that enabled us to do fairly well in our exams.
Yeah, that I like that drive to not fail, but you had this natural competitiveness, and it's probably something I need to look back on all these different conversations I've had between those who are twins, those who are significantly younger than elder siblings, and those who then are only child. And it seems, I think a lot of the athletes that I speak to, I'm recognizing this pattern, certainly from that elite status. But you have where every day is a competition, whether you realized it or not.
Yeah, 100%. And me being the youngest, I think both my brothers, fair to say, probably naturally stronger than I am. Like naturally, I was definitely, when we were kids, I was the weakest out of the three of us. So that meant that I was always battling from a very young age, and I think that's what kind of drove. I was like, right, I am going to be better than you at something. So whatever we did, and actually that gamification that my brothers didn't even know I was competing with them, but I was competing to be
Yeah.
better than them at whatever it is we did, because I wanted
Hmm.
to be the best. And that gamification is something that I've taken through my whole life, even going into when I first started in recruitment. My whole thought process was, I almost treated it like a football club. I was like, right, we're all teammates, we're all colleagues, but I'm going to be the best player. I'm. You don't know I'm competing with you, but I'm competing with you at everything.
Yeah.
And that was kind of my mindset when I first even went into recruitment. And I thought, actually, I can do this. Was right. Okay, let me identify who the best players are. I'm going to copy you. I'm going to watch you, and I'm going to train to the point where I'm better than you. And yeah, my colleagues at the time when I first started recruitment didn't even know I was competing with them, but I
Mm.
was. I
Yeah.
was competing with them every day.
Well, let's get to that point now. So, thinking of your football career, and and starting moving, I'm interested then. At what moment did you start to realize this might be it? This is my football career is going to finish at some point, and I'm going to have to do something about it.
Yeah. I think it was when I was at Huddersfield. Actually, I was this first the manager came in, Stan Turnant. After the first manager bought me, and I was playing quite regularly in my first season, and then Stan Turnant came in my second season, and he didn't like me. It was clear he didn't like me, which is fine. So I didn't really get in many of these squads. I was on the bench here and there, and really in the reserves, which was hard to take. But instead of so I was trying to prove him wrong, I was maybe rebelled a little bit. And then when he got the sack and the new manager came in, Lee Clark, I was like, okay, this is my chance again. Let me show what I've got. And quite unfortunately for me, I think quite a short space after he took over, I got injured. It wasn't a career-threatening injury, but it was a fairly long-term one. I was out for about 10 months, which meant that my contract was coming up for renewal, and he kind of never even seen me play. So he was like, look, I'm going to get rid of you. I'm going to bring in my own players and use that for, obviously he's got a finite budget that he needs to use, so I wanted to allocate that to bring in his own players, which I understood. But at that point, I'd been out for around 10 months to nearly a whole season,
Yeah, yeah.
and that meant trying to secure a contract, coming back to fitness, to secure a contract elsewhere, having not played for a season, and that was tough. I wasn't fit.
Mm.
I hadn't really played on my knee, so you have that psychological battle that you have to go through to get back to full fitness. Is the injury right? Is it not right? And I was trying to win a contract, so I went to a couple of places. I went Bradford, I went Gillingham, but I was playing at mainly probably 50% of my actual capability. I wasn't fit. I hadn't played. I had to get that touch back, and trying to win a contract when you're rusty as hell is difficult. So I couldn't secure one, and it was at that point when I had to take a long, hard look at what I was doing in my life. I think I was 26, 27, 26, 26, 27. And I was like looking around League One, League Two, and obviously the salaries at that time was comparable to probably what I was earning, around 60 to 100,000 a year. And actually, when you start to understand salaries in the real world, and you can actually start to and look at your personal cash flow, I'm thinking to myself, well, if I'm on £1,000 a week and I can do that for the next 5 years, by the time I'm 30, it's not a lot of cash actually to say you've got to sustain a life. So I was looking at myself, just be like, right, I can do this. I can probably, and at that point, I think I realized the Premier League dream's almost over. I couldn't see it for myself anymore at that point. So then I'm thinking to myself, well, I can play lower league until I'm 30, mid 30s, and then I'm going to have to transition into a job. And that's going to be a whole lot more difficult at that age than it is now. So I'm probably best off saying adieu to the professional football world and go and try and make a life for myself outside of football. So that's the decision that we took.
Yeah. So,
I tried to secure the
how
contracts at those clubs.
how did you how did you make that decision?
I didn't know how. That was the, and I was having a daughter as well. My firstborn was due, and thinking I've got to provide for this girl now, and that was what really drove my decision. I thought I need to have a stable, long-term future to be able to provide as a father, and football's not going to give me that. I'm not going to earn enough money that when I'm 35, 40, I can say with my hand on my heart that I'm going to be able to provide a good life for this child. So I knew that I needed to start a career and do something to the point when I was 35, 40, I was going to be in a position to be earning and be able to provide a life for my children. So that was kind of really what drove the decision. It was no longer just about me and what I wanted. It was about, there was a child that was about to come into the world who I was going to be. And again, I'm fairly old fashioned in that sense that it's my job to provide for the family. It's my job to look after her. And that was what really, I was like, right, I need to be able to provide for this kid. I need to be able to put a good roof on her head. She needs to grow up in a nice home. And I can't see myself being able to provide that with confidence
Mm.
with what I'm doing, in lower league football. So that's what was the real driving factor, because I probably would have just played semi-pro, gone to the conference, tried to get back into League Two and build myself back up there. I probably would have done that if it was just
Yeah.
me. but it wasn't just me anymore. You know, there was
No,
someone else that was in the equation.
that shift of focus, a child does do that. Having a partner certainly does, but there is that shift of focus when you have a child, and like you've just described, that's something that can, for many, change your perspective, change your outlook on, again, who you're doing this for, and what then is that purpose.
Definitely.
So for you, that shifted then the amount of time, or that it shifted you away from that Premier League dream, and it made you second guess. Well, how long can you continue in this career? So, what did you do? When you got to that decision? What came next?
Yeah. Oh god, it's a bit of a blur to be honest. But I think I was then just trying to just say the first thing I did was okay, what am I good at? That was the first question I asked myself. What am I good at? What do I think I can go and do? And again, because me and my brother had done fairly well in our education, I always knew that education was something. And I also looked at who I am and my personality and what I'd learned a little bit in football. And I thought, well, I don't want to be an agent. That market was fairly saturated at that time, and I don't really have that much interest in being that ingrained in the sport. And then I thought, well, actually, I want to move away from that and maybe become a presenter. I always thought I'd be good at presenting, so I used the PFA avenue for education, and I went to do a sports and journalism course.
Hmm.
And my view was that I would do that because it was an easier path into the media world using my football background, and then I'll transition into entertainment. And I thought that's what I can do. I can be an entertainer. I can be a presenter. So that's the avenue that I first went down. I still think I can be, by the way. But that was what I always, that's what I thought I'd do. So I went back to uni to do a sports journalism course, and actually part of the modules was the law in terms of libel and all that kind of stuff. And we were having a lesson fairly on into the course with one of the law modules, and I remember the teacher at the time saying to us, it was all footballers, ex-footballers in on this course because it was PFA funded, and I was at Loughborough Uni. And I remember being in this class, and the teacher said to us, "Well, listen, when most of you guys get your degrees and you actually go into this, it's not that high paying. The maximum you'll probably look to earn is £30,000 or £40,000 a year." And I remember I sat there, I was like, "What?" And again, because of the journey I'd been on, I was probably lacking in self confidence a little bit, forgetting what my actual plan was to go into this transition into the world of
Hmm.
Ant and Deck, etc. That's
Yeah,
what my original thought process was.
yeah,
But I'd forgot that very quickly when he said that to me, and I was like, "What?" I remember the class finished, and I just got my bags and left. I was like, "Well, I'm not doing that. That's not enough money for me to provide the life that I want to do." And I never even finished the course. I didn't go back again. I was like,
right.
"Well, that's not acceptable for me."
Hmm.
Bit
Wow.
short-sighted at the time.
Yeah.
Well,
Well.
very short-sighted, but
Yeah.
I left the course. I didn't finish the course. I just left. I was like, I'm not going to be prepared to accept that. I'm going.
I was
So I
about to give you
left.
kudos for saying it's great that you
Um,
tapped into the PFA when got funded, started doing the education path. And now it's like,
yeah,
I'm going to earn
and
what?
then I left. I did it for like 3-4 months, and I was like, nah, that's not that. No, no, I was like, no, I'm not accepting that. That's not what I'm doing. And then I kind of started to go into the working world thing. Oh, I could be good at sales. I'm a people person. I can be
Yeah.
good at sales. So when I started getting odd jobs here, I did one selling Wi-Fi, which was actually no salary, but they did it on the premise that if you get good, you could own your own office. And that was my first venture into
Yeah.
business ownership, entrepreneurship. I was like, oh wow, that sounds good. I could own an office doing. So I did that, and they taught me kind of the fundamentals of sales in these quick workshop things. And we'd go out knocking on doors,
Yeah.
and I was door knocking in Yorkshire in the winter. And
Mm.
as you can imagine, as a young black guy knocking on people's doors in part of rural Yorkshire, didn't go down well. I had the police called on me a couple of times just trying to sell people Wi-Fi, and I was like, this isn't going to go anywhere.
Do you know,
So ended up
do you
then
know,
leaving there to go and
it's
sell.
it's a funny the situation, but I have to say, so I was in Lyon. So after uni, I moved down to Lyon in southern France, and we were selling. I was then door to door sales, selling telephone, one tel, international telephones, and you could phone internationally.
Yeah, I was selling Talk Talk.
Yeah, there
Yeah,
you
I
go.
was selling Talk Talk Wi-Fi.
it's a rite of passage. And
Talk Wi-Fi. It
yeah,
is.
yeah, similar. There's me knocking on doors, speaking French, poor French, I guess, trying to sell these things. Yeah, that didn't end well. It ended quickly anyway.
Yeah, it
So
didn't go down well. Yeah, it didn't go down. I remember knocking on this lady's door and she was like, "What do you want? We don't have anything." I'm like, "What?" I'm trying to say your Wi-Fi. She was like, "No, I'm going to call the police," and she did. She called. I left. Obviously, I was like, "Okay." Started knocking on the neighbours' houses, and then 5 minutes later, these police car
yeah,
rolls up, and they're asking me like, "What are you doing here?" Blah, blah, blah. I had to show them all my IDs. Look, I'm
yeah,
selling Wi-Fi, and they were like, "Oh, look, we think it's best you leave."
yeah.
So I was like, right, okay. And then literally, I was like, right, I'm quitting.
Hmm.
That's it. I'm not.
Yeah,
I'm not going to be subject. I'm not a criminal. I'm not going to be
yeah.
left treated like a criminal.
That's
So
it.
I left the job. That was. I didn't go back the next day. I was
Yeah.
like, well, I'm not doing
So,
that again.
so I've got to say, so during this period, you've stopped being a professional, full-time professional footballer. You're
Yeah,
getting harassed by the police as you're knocking on doors trying to earn a living.
yeah.
What was this period like for you, like emotionally? What was this like?
This was it was tough, and again because I'd felt that I'd kind of not engaged my brothers during my football career. I didn't have really anyone that I could speak to about these challenges I was having. Or I didn't. I could have in hindsight, but I didn't. So I was kind of dealing with this, just internalizing kind of these struggles. Didn't have many people that I feel I could speak to or talk to, and again, mistakenly thinking I needed to be the strong father figure. My daughter had been born. I needed to be the provider, so I needed I felt I needed to show that strength. So, looking back on it, I internalized everything. Didn't speak to anyone about any of the struggles I was having. And I remember at that point I was renting with the little money that I had left from football. We were renting this apartment in Wakefield, and I was paying for that. And again, my misguided thought process was like, I can't talk to my partner. She
Mm,
can't know that I'm struggling, so I'm still going to pay for all the food. I'm going to pay for all the rent. I'm not going to reach out to her for help or support. Um, this has to be. I have to do it. It has to be
yeah,
me. This is my job. So quite quickly started to struggle financially. I remember one point when my daughter was a baby, had no money in the account, couldn't pay for milk. I had to call my mate Max to send me money to pay for milk for my daughter. He had to pay my phone bill, and it was at that point when I had nothing left. He was having to give me money for the basics,
yeah.
and then the rent was going to be. I had to say to the missus, look, can't afford this anymore.
Hmm.
And at the time, she was actually way more understanding than I thought she was going to be. She was like, okay, we'll move back to. We ended up moving her back to her mum's. I think it was her mum or her dad's. I can't remember. We
Hmm.
moved back in with her parents, and then I was like, right, I've got to get a real job here.
Yeah,
This, these jobs of grandeur where I'm going to potentially own an office, or this isn't going to happen. I need to go and just get a job so that I can provide the basics. So that was when I was. I remember at that point I was in Yorkshire, and we were living in South Yorkshire. And not everyone is racist in South Yorkshire, but we experienced. My daughter was born, and we were in Wakefield. We had a couple of instances of quite bad racism,
hmm,
and I was just like, I can't be in Yorkshire. This isn't the place that I'm going to be able to provide. So I ended up looking for jobs in London with a view that we would move down to London. Um, so that's what I did. I got my first recruitment job in
oh,
London
yeah,
on £20,000 a year at a
hmm,
company called Venquis, and I started there. So we moved back in with my mum. So we all moved down. Mrs. picked up. She got a job in London. Little one moved down. We moved back in with my mum. So we're living in the attic room of my mum's house, and I got the first job in recruitment. But again, at that time, looking in hindsight, I was playing semi-pro football as well on the weekends to earn as much money as possible. And I spent no time as a family when my little one was a baby. I wasn't so neglecting that part of my life. Where
yeah,
I was just purely focused on trying to make money.
mm,
So it was no fault that my missus, she was a young mum, and so I was kind of was neglecting them. So
yeah,
it wasn't long before she was like homesick. She was like, I need to go back to Yorkshire. I can't do
yeah,
this here. So she packed up, brought my daughter back up to Yorkshire. I was still working in London. I was like, well, I can't quit this job. It's paying me a salary. I can't quit. So I was then travelling every weekend on the bus back to Yorkshire to see them. Went back down for work. on the Sunday night
Yeah.
on the mega bus,
Yeah. Yeah.
and we did that for years, just while we were trying to get
Yeah.
get our foot back on that first rung of the ladder,
Yeah.
living it between our
That's
parents'
harsh.
houses.
Yeah. That. I mean,
Yeah, yeah, it
that,
was a tough time,
what,
tough time.
what was the toughest part for you at that moment?
I think it was a couple of things, the uncertainty, and at the time, in hindsight, definitely a forms of depression in terms of, not knowing what to do,
Hmm. Yeah.
feeling a bit of a failure, not knowing what my future held for me,
Hmm.
um, and not also having that outlet to talk to people, not feeling I had that support network at the time. And again, part of my own doing, but not just reaching out to people for help to say, hey, look, I'm struggling with this. What do I do? I need help, kind of thing. And luckily, obviously, it worked out okay for me. But there
Yeah.
are definitely things that I would do differently now if I found myself in that situation again. And as I say, I was quite fortunate that after under 3 years, after the first year, I got really good at the job. I started to make a bit more money, and then when my daughter was 3, unbeknownst to me, even though I had been paying for everything, my missus was saving all of her cash, so she had the money for our first flat.
Right.
So we ended up putting a deposit on a flat, and that was really the start of life
Yeah.
improving. We moved into the flat. My daughter was 3, going on 4, I think. Yeah, 3 going on 4, and she had her first bedroom that wasn't at one of her parents'
Yeah.
houses.
Yeah.
So, I started to really feel like a bit of a man again. I ended up then taking on the mortgage for that flat. It was quite small. It was a really small mortgage, only like £300, £400 a month repayment. So I was like, fantastic. We've got our own property. We've got our foot on the property ladder again.
Yeah.
Life is on the up. And then it was a few years, a year or two, I forget, moving into that flat that then I ended up getting a new job
Yeah.
as a startup consultancy that wanted me to help them set up this consultancy, and I was own a percentage in the business, and that was kind of my first time I'd gone into something like that. I'd tried to set
Yeah.
up other businesses, failed. It led money from my friends who were playing in the Premier League at the time
Yeah.
to set up an online fashion. It was actually quite innovative at the time, desktop based,
Yeah. Yeah.
online e-commerce
Yeah. Yeah.
fashion website. Didn't even launch that. But I learned a lot in terms of how not to set up a business.
Right. Yeah.
Ended up going on this business venture with these people that were setting up a consultancy. Again, that failed after 6 months, but that's why I left recruitment to go and do that with them.
Yeah.
And at that point, I was then started to interview in different places, and then a client of mine called me up and was like, "Hey, listen, we need your help with something. Can you help us?" I was like, "Yeah, sure. I'm looking for a job, but I've got time on my hands. I'll do this." So, ended up successfully doing it, and I'd accepted a job actually at that time to go
Mm.
and sell security services for like the likes of BBC if they were like presenting in Yemen or whatever, and they needed to get out because of conflict. This company would provide that security detail to get them out of
How,
hotspots and stuff. So I ended up
just how
accepting the job to do that.
how football. You did all right at school. You got part way through a degree.
Yeah,
You how's that
yeah,
linked to all of these different job or these different industries? Where look, for me listening, I'm
yeah,
thinking you don't know anything about those things.
yeah. I was just learning as I went along. I was just literally just learning, and even the failed ventures that I did, I can genuinely say hand on heart from every single one of them, there was something that I learned that I could use in the next thing that I was doing to make myself the more complete individual to do that job. Even the talk one that I did, I remember I learned things, sales techniques, the Jones effect, build and rapport. Even though I only did it for a short period of time, there were so many things. The learning curve into sales was
Yeah.
so steep.
Mm.
That I learned so much from that first job, even though I made zero money. In fact, I lost money because we weren't salaried. We were paying our own money
Yes.
to travel around, and it was all commission based. So I actually lost money because I didn't make many sales, but I learned so much that it was invaluable. I'd
Mm.
have paid double what I paid, even though I didn't have money at the time. But as I say, I was learning from each iteration and each new job that I did, and each experience I had, even the course that I did in Loughborough. Again, learned elements about legal. I learned little things from each thing that I was doing. And then, when this company contacted me to do this work for them, I remember I'd accepted a job, and the job offer, I was like, okay, I'm really motoring here. I'm starting, and they had offered me £50,000 a year as my base salary for this
Yeah.
this new job, and I was like, that's not a bad income. I'm starting to do all right again. And then this company contacted me to do this piece of work for them, and I did it successfully. And that one job in particular was, I think it was like £20,000, and I was like, whoa, hold on a minute, I could just do this. And that was kind of my epiphany. I was like, but I needed a company and a vehicle with which to
Yeah.
invoice them. So I remember speaking to my partner saying, hey, listen, I'm going to set my own company up,
Yeah.
recruitment company.
Right.
And then that was it. I did it. I thought I'll give it 6 months. Let me see
Yeah.
how I get on in this next 6 months. So that 6 months that's where the competitor in me really came. I was like, right,
Right. Yeah.
I've got to go for it.
Mm-hmm.
And I literally just had a laptop, my mobile phone. I was working from home. I was working from hotel lobbies. So I'm going to smash this. So
Yeah.
I did. In 6 months, I made more money than I've ever made over a 6-month period than I've ever made in my life.
Yeah.
And I was like, whoa, hold on a minute.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had that December, I remember I was like, I'm back. Wow. I had all this cash around me. And I remember I took some friends out and I bought a table in central London, spent thousands on all this champagne and all this
Yeah.
stuff for them, thinking I'm back, I'm the man again. And then that January, the first email of that January, after I'd been only going for 6-7 months, I was due to invoice a client again around £20,000. But the first email, I woke up at my mum's house, opened up my laptop, and the first email was this candidate backing out of the job offer. He'd emailed the client directly, and I just had an email from the client saying, well, this is a surprise. That
Yeah.
was the first email I opened in
Oh.
2016. And then I remember I just closed the laptop
Yeah.
and went back to bed. I was like, Jesus.
Yeah.
And then it was actually what I didn't know was actually the making of where we are today. Because I was like, actually, no, I'm going to refill that job. And actually, not only going to refill that job, I'm going to build an organization. I'm going to start hiring. And so that was when I first thought, I'm going to turn this into a real company.
Yes.
So that was where early 2016 that I was like, right, I was on the mission to go and create an organization at that point. So that's where it all went, and then ended up, I think about a year later, hiring the first employee,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then it grew from there. So, in 2017, we got the first employee. I had some business partners at the time that I brought in,
Yeah.
and we went on a journey around 2000, between then and 2019, where we got to around 8 people in the organization. We had a small office in London Bridge, and then at that point, I kind of reached the maximum because I had limited. Remember, I had no experience
Yeah.
on
That's
building a
right.
company,
Yeah. Yeah.
managing people, VAT. I had none of that. I was learning as we went. VAT
Yes.
returns, corporation
Mm-hmm.
tax,
Yeah.
all of this was new to me.
And how did you learn it?
Payroll, everything was new. Just as we went. I was Googling stuff. I had people doing certain things. I had to check the tax returns. I was checking tax returns. I was
Mm-hmm.
checking payroll every month. I was setting up. I was basically doing finance, operations, sales. I was doing everything to keep the company. And that's where I lost my teeth. Stress
Wow.
was through the roof because I was doing all of these different jobs. And then in 2019, I was introduced by a good friend of mine to my now business partner, because I was actually looking at setting up another recruitment business. And I remember I left his office and he called me up after the meeting and was like, don't do it. And I was like, why? Because he's like, listen, you were in the meeting and my phone was literally, because again, I was the company.
Yeah.
My
Yeah.
phone was probably ringing every 3 minutes. My phone would go.
Yeah.
And he was like, you're on the cusp of something,
Yeah.
but let me help you.
Right.
So I was like, okay. So he came in, he looked at the company, he sent his guy in, who's now my CFO, to kind of do an audit. So
Yeah.
Phil came in, did an audit on the company, and his report was, look, you've got the makings of something here. You've built a great brand reputation. You're doing okay. And well, we weren't making a lot of revenue at the time, but it was still,
Yeah.
again,
Yeah.
me doing
It's
everything. they joined me, and with a view that they were actually going to help me scale to acquire me into their much larger group. They were working for a £110 million turnover business, and they were making acquisitions all over the place to grow the company to a point of eventual sale. And they'd got private equity involved and all this kind of good stuff. And at that point, this was the year before COVID. COVID then hit, but the way they'd structured the deal meant that they would either be penalised or incentivised in terms of shares to either claw back or pay out based off of their future revenue
Yeah.
projections.
Yeah.
But where COVID hit, wiped off a number of revenue instantly, that triggered certain things that the private equity firm ended up owning way more than they should have done.
Yeah.
So my now business partners were in a position where they were like, well, we've lost control of the company. So they were like, well, we're no longer going to help you scale to acquire you. We actually want to leave, and can we join you?
Yeah. Yes.
So I was like, yeah,
That's a
absolutely. But they true to
yeah.
true to form, they were like, look, we'll put our money where our mouths is. This is what we want to achieve in terms of share. So I ended up buying the shares back from my current business partners, who were great guys, but they'd never done recruitment before. So they weren't really able to help me
Yeah.
scale. They didn't have the knowledge or the experience. It's not what they did. So I ended up buying the shares back off them. And my current business partners were like, look, we'll do 12 months. Put 5% aside now so we know you're not going to. And then after 12 months, if you're a man of your word, we'll renegotiate the share ownership. And that's what they did. So, they came in and were phenomenal.
What do you know?
And, they have
Sorry, keep going. Keep going.
bags of experience. Yeah, they have bags of experience. I was learning. My learning curve was so steep with them in terms of actually what scaling in the business looked like, what a potential exit, how that could be structured. I'm still learning all this stuff now, but also I'd never really even, in terms of actually running an organization, my thought on running cash flow was just how much money do we have in the bank, and how long can we go without making any money. That's as simple as my experience was of running a cash flow and running a P&L. I didn't even have a P&L, so to speak. It was just how much cash do we have, how much is my OPEX and my CAPEX, and how long can I go without earning any money.
Yeah.
That's as sophisticated as my P&L was.
It's a good way to
P&L
start.
management was.
I have to admit, it is for those listening. It's like, well, it's a good place to start. Don't spend what you don't have. So
It's a good place.
yeah,
Exactly that. And I was only looking at, I didn't have a P&L. I was just looking at the balance sheet. That's all I was doing, in effect. And these new guys came in and really helped sophisticate my learning and how to grow a company. So we went on a really, over the last, I've been working with them for 4 years now, just over 3 years, so 3.5, 4 years, coming up to 4 years. And in that time, I would say we grew the company from 8 to, there's now 55 of us across 2 offices. Hoping to grow it to don't know what yet, but in my head I'm thinking 200 to 300 people. That's my personal target. I don't know if they agree with me, but I've learned so much over these last 3 years that these guys are coming in to teach me. So it's been fantastic.
Malvin, it's interesting listening to you there, because it is an incredible story that that kind of gets us to the room now, that gets us to where we are today, and I hear that, and it takes me back to you talking about when you were getting that interest from people as a footballer and other clubs were coming in for you. And here what you've built is you've built a structure around, you've got that support network that it was family. Here you've got that same support network that can help build you to that next level, that can help you shift gear to that next level of business ownership and really business, I'm going to say understanding, right? Business acumen is perhaps the right phrase to use.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you've got that support, and now you can go to that next level. For you, how does that sound? Does that feel about right?
Yeah, definitely. I now have kind of, because there's so much I don't know. So I'm having monthly lessons still with my CFO on a balance sheet, on EBIT calculations. I'm learning all of this stuff. I'm still not an expert on it. When we do budget reviews and go through the P&L, I'm still asking, what does that mean? I'm still asking those kind of questions. And but I have now resource that again, I have one-to-ones with the CFO now every month, and I can ask as many stupid questions as I need to ask.
Yeah.
Well, what does that mean? What does that mean? What does this mean? But I'm still starting to get that understanding, and even when it comes to the financing of an organization, and the cash that you can leverage, from a debt perspective, and that using that to run an organization. So, you having your net assets, all of these kind of stuff. I'm now learning that you can scale your organization way quicker, based off your net assets and positions and all this kind of good stuff, which is not something that I would have never known when I was by myself. And now I'm armed with, if I were to go on another exercise after this, which I hopefully I will do. I think I've got
Mm.
more in the tank to do something else. I'm going to be going at it and coming at it from a position of way more competency, in terms of how to build an organization, how to partner
Yeah.
with banks, invoice discounting facilities, all this kind of good stuff, which I never knew before.
And you use the word confidence. You spoke earlier about lacking confidence as you were coming out of the game, and here building again that confidence. And this journey now gets you to a point where you've got the confidence to really look and say, well, what do I want to achieve, and how do you want to get there? And recognizing there are different ways
Yeah,
of doing that. I think that was really
yeah,
powerful, really
definitely.
interesting story.
Definitely. And I think, the lesson that I've learned, and I think I'm at a junction now again where almost where I was when I played football, but being able to recognize that, where, I've gone through the slog, so to speak, of scaling, and we're at a pivotal moment where, the company's making, in the grand scheme of things, a lot of money. So I could quite easily, sit back and say, okay, I've done it. We're here. We've made it. But I've learned from that mistake in the past, right? When I played football and thinking we've made it, and I won't make that same mistake again. We're in a position where, again, I've not realized my goals yet. I want to take it to the point of a sale, and this time I'm going to do that. And I equate the sale, of the business to me hitting the Premier League, right, when I was playing
Mm.
football. And until I'm at that point, I can't take my foot off the pedal. In fact, I've now got to shift up a gear because, there are a number of people, and especially the economy at the moment. There are a number of companies that have gone bust this year. There's uncertainty in the market. The political landscape has been shifting both in the UK and the US, which has caused, uncertainty in banks, uncertainty in most industries. People have struggled this year, cost of living and all that kind of good stuff. And the resilience now that not only I have, but also my board have, is that we're going to not only ride this kind of period of
Mhm.
uncertainty, but once hopefully the market opens up again, and things are growing again, the economies are growing, that we're going to be in a much stronger position
Yeah.
to go boom. And again, having learned what I learned when I played football, and when I came out of football, the mistake I made was that complacency of thinking I've made it. And I won't allow the company to get to that same place that I was in when I played football. We've made it. We don't need to try. We need to be, as an organisation, striving, getting better, bringing better consultants in to improve, what we currently have, and looking at that continuous improvement on a monthly
Mm.
basis till we get to the point. I want to be one of the best niche agencies out there, and until that is validated by someone coming in to say we want to acquire you, only at that point will I allow myself to take my foot off the pedal.
Mhm.
Luckily, I can say I can go on holiday now and actually not have to work, because in the
Yeah.
early years
Yeah.
I was having to do that.
That's
I
right.
was, I was having to work, but luckily I have a team around me now that I don't have to work when I'm on holiday.
Yeah.
But you know,
That's brilliant.
still the dedication is there, and we have a goal.
Yeah. Well, look, I know I've taken so much of your time listening to this story. Just a couple more questions, really. And one is, so
Yeah,
as you look back at your experience and you think about those listening, what what would you advise them
yeah,
they ought to do in order to help set themselves up for, well, I guess that second wind in life once they finish their elite sport?
yeah. The biggest thing to do, I would say, is talk, and the platform you're providing is one that is so important. If I had had a you there, that when I came out to speak to and be like, right, help guide me, what do I do? Because I remember when I came out, I went to the job center. I had no money. I needed, and I was like, help me find a job. And their response was, are you on the dole? I was like, no. And they were like, well, we can't help you. Go use a computer. And I was like, I don't even have a C. Well, what do I do? I don't know. I'm lost. I'm lost. There was no support network whatsoever. I remember, my bank account was frozen. I had minus £2,000 in my bank, and I was still getting letters from the FA selling me Rolex watches and in-house cinemas. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't need this. I need someone to help me. Like,
Yeah.
what am I doing here? And I didn't have the infrastructure or the support network, or it might have existed, but certainly the path to find it wasn't there. I didn't know who to contact. Like, who can help me? I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know real life, so to speak. And I've always been in football since I left
Yeah.
school. So that, I would say, people coming out of that is, and I think as footballers, we're fairly egotistical in the sense that, oh, we can do it. But I
Not
would
just
say
footballers, but
to
yeah.
people coming out, no matter what, yeah, coming out of the sport, or is just drop the thought process that you have to do it yourself, and just reach out to people, speak to people, show your vulnerability. Let people help guide you in terms of what you can do, and the avenues, and be open to having those really honest conversations that you are struggling, you don't know what to do, you're a bit lost. Because I think a lot of us, in particular, when we're looking at that second wind, is the first thing before you can even start to take in that second breath is understanding where you currently are, and navigating your current as is, and where you are at that particular moment in time. And the way that you get out of that way quicker is by communicating, speaking on openly and honestly with friends, with family, and people that can help guide you, who've been there before. That's the biggest advice I can give to anyone coming out of sport right now.
Malvin, that's excellent. That's really sound advice. Thanks for, well, I guess, being vulnerable yourself by sharing your story today. Super,
Pleasure.
really insightful, really open. Look, there are going to be people listening who are going to want to follow your journey, perhaps even get in touch, and who resonate with your experience. What's the best place to find you or to reach out?
Yeah, I'd say LinkedIn. Really, I'm active on LinkedIn. It's my job daily, so I'm on the platform every day. So anyone who listens, who wants to talk, I'm happy to definitely, again, be that support network for someone who is going through that journey. So definitely, connect with me on LinkedIn. Malvin Kamara, Valum Associates, pretty easy to find on there, and drop me a message. And 100%, I'll try and find that I will make the time to speak to anyone, particularly who's going through that journey. But yeah, happy, and people can follow us on there. Everything's shared on there in terms of what we're doing, updates. So yeah, definitely connect with me on LinkedIn.
Brilliant. Malvin, thanks very much for sharing your story with us today.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me, Ryan.